Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. This was such a fun project to do. Of course, I love working with spackle and drywall on the bases of my encaustic paintings because it just adds so much depth and texture. It makes things really versatile. And so this is just some drywall spackle that I'm spreading on the surface. I used a stamp over the top of it, and I was a little surprised at how dirty it was. I clean my stamps after every use. But I guess after hundreds of times using a stamp, uh, dried up ink and stuff tends to accumulate. So it was a little dirtier than I anticipated, but it actually worked out pretty well because it made the words and the stamps stand out so that you can see them even better through layers and layers of wax, which was actually really nice and kind of perfect for this piece. I I really soaked the stamps with water because I didn't want any of the spackle to stick to the stamp when I pulled it away, and that worked really well. I've got some perfect stamped impressions and that I'm really happy with. I had to let it dry for probably about 40 hours just to make sure that everything got dry. All the way through the spackle down to the wood was completely dry. I didn't want any wet or damp spots. I wanted the wax to have a completely dry surface to adhere to, and I'm really warming things up so that all of the wax soaks deeply into the spackle and then into the wood beneath it. Even after 3 layers, the text is still very readable, and I'm really happy with that because you can see the wax, you can see it's almost like water, like looking through it to the bottom. And adding stamps to the surface, it really adds a unique contrast that you can't get with any other medium except encaustic. I got some really good impressions when I stamped this red India ink into the surface of the wax. And so at last minute, I kind of decided to let the India ink dry and then fill those impressions with oil paint. I was really curious because India ink, once it dries on the surface, you can't rub it off, but I've never put oil paint over that and then use linseed oil to wipe it away. So I was curious if the linseed oil was going to remove any of the India ink, and I didn't hold back. I wiped the surface very clean, and I was pretty rough with it, but the India ink didn't go anywhere. It was pretty awesome to see all of it stay. It wasn't affected by the linseed oil at all. I did lose a little bit of the red though, having covered it with black oil paint. So I decided to go over it one more time with some red India ink, just to add a little bit more red. I had to let the surface dry for a couple of days so that the linseed oil would have time to oxidize and the surface wouldn't be tacky anymore. And then I went through and added these letters with carbon paper on the surface of the wax. I chose hope because I felt it was appropriate symbolically to kind of represent this piece. How we have this visual text that's at the bottom that's covered with layers and layers of wax. You can see it, but you can't quite reach it. But you know that it's there, and it just seemed appropriate to kind of use hope as a way to represent the symbolism of this piece. When I paint the words with India ink, the ink tends to ball up on the surface. It doesn't transfer easily to the wax, and so it takes me a long time to cover the entire letters. But it's definitely worth the time that it takes to do that, because again, once the India ink dries on the surface, it doesn't go anywhere. So I have these beautiful letters, this deep rich black that's just on the surface of the wax. I don't have to cover it or fuse it or anything. I would love to hear what you think of this piece or any of the techniques that I've used. I'm always open to suggestions and critiques. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video.